What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Just to give you a little update for those of you who haven't heard it, as you know, I was recently removed from the YouTube Partner Program. So from now on, things are going to be a bit different when I do these videos. I'm not going to have any B-roll footage in the background from now on. Instead, it will be footage of an artist creating custom art content for the stories within the video. I would like to give special thanks to today's artist, Lovely Stuff. If you enjoyed watching them create the art pieces for this video, and you enjoy their artwork, please be sure to check out their link in the description. They've done the channel a great service by helping me out, so go ahead and support and help them out in turn. As well, the videos from now on will probably be a bit shorter, around the 30-minute mark, and they might not necessarily be every day either. But still, I'll do my best to get the content out to you guys without interrupting the schedule too much. If you guys like this channel and you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, as the channel could use your help more than ever right now. Also, if you are willing, there is a link to my Patreon in the description of the video and probably in the comments as well. If you like this channel and you want to support it and keep it going, you can go ahead and contribute to any of the 4 tiers on there. The lowest is only $1. And if everyone watching this video contributed just $1, I'd be able to do this without interruption for years and years. Anyway, let's get right into the scary stories, and I hope you guys enjoy today's video. This happened during spring break in 2019, when my girlfriend and I drove down to Florida with 2 other friends. We didn't plan it very well, which meant by the time we got there, almost every hotel was either full or ridiculously expensive. We ended up finding this little roadside motel about 15 minutes from the beach. It looked kind of old, but the sign out front said vacancy, and at that point we were just tired from driving all day. The lobby smelled like cigarette smoke and cleaning chemicals. The guy behind the counter looked half asleep. I remember he barely made eye contact when I told him we needed a room. He tapped a few things on the computer and slid a key card across the counter. "Room 214, he said. That was it. No small talk, nothing else at all. My girlfriend and I carried our bags upstairs, while our friends stayed behind to get snacks from a vending machine. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet, honestly. You could hear the ice machine humming at the end of the hall. Room 214 was about halfway down. I swiped the card and pushed the door open. At first, everything looked normal. The curtains were closed, and the lights were off except for the bathroom, which had the door cracked open with the light on inside. Something felt immediately wrong, though. You know that feeling when you walk into a place and you can tell someone's just been there? The bed wasn't made. The covers were pulled halfway off like someone had gotten up in a hurry. There was a suitcase sitting open on the little luggage rack by the wall. Folded clothes were inside. My girlfriend whispered to me, "I think someone's already in here." I said maybe housekeeping just hadn't finished cleaning it yet, but even as I said that, I didn't really believe it myself. Then we began to hear something, a small sound from the bathroom. It was like something shifting. It was not loud, just a soft movement. We both froze. The bathroom door was still cracked open, and the light was on inside. I could see the edge of the sink through the gap. My girlfriend grabbed my arm and whispered that we needed to go. We stepped back into the hallway, and I pulled the door shut as quietly as I could. For a second, we just stood there looking at each other. Neither of us wanted to be the one to open that door again. Our friends came up the stairs about a minute later, laughing about something or other. We told them what happened. They thought we were messing with them at first, until I showed them the key card. All 4 of us went back down to the lobby. The same guy was still behind the desk. I told him, "Hey, I think you gave us a room that's already occupied." He frowned immediately and said that wasn't possible. I explained the suitcase, the messy bed, the bathroom light. The guy stared at the computer screen for a moment, then typed something. He then said something that still creeps me out to this day. He said, "That room hasn't been rented in 2 weeks." I told him we'd literally just opened the door and seen someone else's things inside. He told us that housekeeping had just cleared it out yesterday. Then he asked me something really weird. "Did you see anyone?" I told him no, just the suitcase and the bathroom light. For a moment, he sat there like he was thinking hard about something. He stood up and grabbed a master key. "Stay right here," he said. Of course, we did not stay there. We followed him upstairs. When we got to room 214, he opened the door and flipped on the lights. The room was now completely empty. The bed was perfectly made. No suitcase, no clothes, nothing. Even the bathroom light was off as well. I swear to you, the room looked like it hadn't been touched in days. The guy walked in, looked around for a few moments, then came back out and said it must have been a mix-up earlier with housekeeping. The thing is, that explanation makes no sense, because when we opened that door the first time, all the things were inside, and I know I heard something moving about in that bathroom. We ended up staying in a different room on the first floor, but I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, I could hear footsteps outside our room, slow footsteps back and forth, over and over again. I couldn't stop thinking about that while we were sleeping. This has been a very hard story to tell, but I think I'm at a point where I'm able to tell it. I have 2 sons. The younger one lived with us until he was 18 years old and was a really good kid. He wanted to take a year off of school before going to college, though, and we were okay with that. He got a car, and his plan was to travel around the country and see everything that he'd never had a chance to see. Things seemed fine at first. He would call me at some point nearly every day. He was like that. He had never been away from home for a long period of time, so calling us made it feel to him like he wasn't that far away. Then things began to get a little weird, though, when the calls came less and less frequently. At one point, they stopped coming in at all. This got us very worried, because it was really unlike him. Also, when we tried to call him back, his phone always went directly to voicemail. After maybe a week of this, we got very concerned and got in contact with the authorities. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot they could do to help us. We thought it was probably no big deal at first. For a while, his credit card was even still being used. We wondered if maybe he was just having a problem with his phone. But it didn't take long for us to not feel good about that either. The charges stopped after the charge at a fast food restaurant one day. We didn't think someone else was using his card, though. The charges were at the places he would regularly eat at. Plus, he still had a lot of credit in his card. He was nowhere near his limit, but the card just stopped being used. We got in touch with authorities in the town with the last charge, and they tried to help as much as possible, but we didn't make any progress with them either. They weren't able to find any car matching his description or any signs that something had happened to him. But if he wasn't buying gas, he had to be somewhere in that area. That was my reasoning. But I didn't know what to do. The days went by and nothing happened. After that, some time passed. We didn't hear anything from him, and we were beginning to give up hope. Then one night, we heard the doorbell ring in the middle of the night. My husband got up. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning. He went down to check the door and told me that no one appeared to be there. We assumed it was just some kid playing a prank or something like that, and he came back to bed. We decided to worry about it in the morning. In the morning, we checked the front porch camera that we had set up, and were really shocked at what we discovered. Our son had shown up on the front porch of the house. This was before the doorbell had been rung, though. He simply stood there on the porch, looking directly in the camera. It was unnerving. It nearly looked like it wasn't even him. There was something behind his eyes that was missing. He stood there for a long period of time, just staring into the camera. After a while, he finally rang the doorbell and walked off out of view. He must have hidden or been gone already by the time my husband came down and checked the door. We got in touch with the police. We figured he had to be somewhere in town. But in addition, we had some of our friends begin checking around the neighborhood and even driving to nearby towns, checking out all of the parking lots and everything. We were looking for his car, and I was thinking we would definitely find it. Something was obviously wrong with him. Maybe he had a moment where he was reaching out for help by showing up. But we never did find him. It was like having all the hope in the world presented to you in one moment, only to have it immediately snatched away too. It was not only depressing, it was also very scary. The look in his eyes in that video, which I was not able to ever look at again, was the most haunting thing I had ever seen. There are a few bricks missing on the side of our house right at the ground level. We had decided not to fix it, since there are a lot of stray cats in the neighborhood. We adore those stray cats, and we would even put down some food in the basement for them. Well, it was an unfinished basement and a crawl space really, but there were several neighborhood cats that we knew would go down there, and we were happy to have them. Of course, we would hear all sorts of noises come from under the house when the cats were moving around. More than once, it seemed like they might be having a fight under there as well. That's just kind of the nature of cats though, and we still considered them welcome. It was okay to have cats down there, because there was almost nothing that we had down there, since it wasn't resistant to the weather and flooding. The only time we ever went into the basement was when we had to do something with the hot water heater, so there were times when we might not have gone down there for a year or more. We would put bowls of food on the top step right by the door, because neither of us really liked going down there if we didn't have to. One winter, we figured there must have been some new cats down there. There was more noise than usual that winter coming from the crawl space. As the months went by, we didn't really give it any thought though. It was just the same thing we went through all the time, and we were happy the cats had a place that wasn't as harsh as the elements outside were to them. Eventually though, the hot water heater stopped working, so I grabbed my tools and headed down to the basement in order to try and fix it. We had it for a while, and yeah, it was old, but I was always able to get it fixed easily. It was a dark and dank basement. I didn't enjoy being down there, and was happy that I only had to do it once in a great while. While I was working on the heater though, I began to feel really strange. I don't know why, but there was something that felt off down there. I tried shaking it off the whole time, but it just wouldn't go away. When I was done working on the hot water heater, I heard a meow coming from the crawl space. Looking up, I noticed one of the stray cats standing on the wall. It was a gray tabby that we'd known for years, one of the strays that always allowed us to pet him. I went to pet the cat and get a few good scratches in before I noticed something. There was barely any light in the crawl space, but looking past the cat deep into it, I noticed something that shouldn't be there. I don't know why, but the first thing my mind told me was that I was looking at a mannequin lying far back in the space. I guess my mind translated it that way, because it was difficult to grasp the truth that there was a person at the far end looking right at me and holding still, I suppose hoping that I wouldn't notice him, but there was no doubt that he was right there, and I did see him. I think he realized I must have noticed, because he began moving toward me, crawling a little in my direction. Fortunately, he could not move very fast in that extremely tight space under the house. Although I was shocked and immensely scared, I was able to get out of there a lot quicker than he was able to get anywhere near me. When I got back into the house to call the police, my wife watched out the back window. The man eventually emerged from the basement and took off running to a wooded area close by our house. When the police arrived, my wife gave them a description of the man. They went out into the woods and fortunately found the guy pretty easily. Inspecting the area he had been laying in, it became obvious the man had been down there for quite a while. He was likely responsible for the increased noises we had been hearing that winter. That was really what was the scariest part. Me seeing that guy definitely gave me the shock of my life, but thinking that he had been living there the whole time, right under our feet for months, was a deeply disturbing thought. It took my wife and I a long time in order to shake that feeling too. But don't worry, we kept the hole open for the stray cats, and fortunately enough, nothing like that ever occurred again. My grandma had the most amazing house. It was a very old southern plantation sort of house that sat on a huge piece of property. Growing up, going to visit her was always one of my favorite things to do, and I loved that house. I liked all of the old rooms, and I would explore them and find something new nearly every time that I was there. I don't recall how old I was when this story happened. If I had to guess, I would think I was maybe around 12 or 13 years old. I was still young enough to not yet be bored by not having anyone to hang out with while we were visiting. I didn't normally go up into the attic. The door was always locked to the staircase that led up there. But this time, for whatever reason, it wasn't. I always checked it because I was curious to see what was behind that door. So imagine my surprise when it just opened right up that time. The first thing I noticed was how musty it was. I was still a kid though, so that didn't really bother me at all. I began to venture up the stairs. It was pretty dark up there, and there wasn't a single light that I could find. I hadn't really anticipated that, so I had to leave and go find a flashlight I could use to see around. There were all sorts of neat things up in that attic. It was a long time ago, so I don't recall everything that was there. There was a lot of really old furniture and racks that had clothes on them. There were all sorts of interesting things as well, like this really old bicycle leaning up against a wall. I even found some old books that were dusty as hell. I flipped through a couple of them, and what I remember the most were how dry the pages were. I then heard a creaking noise. I jumped, of course, in surprise. I had been paying close attention to a book at the time. I shined the flashlight in the direction of the noise, but I didn't see anything unusual over there. There was a lot of furniture, though, so if there was something there, I may not have seen it. I went back to looking at the book before I heard another creaking noise. This definitely sounded like someone was stepping on the floor. I shined the flashlight back over to that area again, but there was nothing there. It was the third time, when I heard two creaks that sounded like someone was walking, that I ultimately decided to get up and go look over the furniture to make sure. Again, the dust was unbelievable. The furniture may have been even more dusty than all the books. I began shining the flashlight behind the pieces to see if someone or something was there. Of course, I didn't really believe something would be. The sounds were most likely coming from an animal, I reasoned. But if so, I wanted to see what that was. There was an old desk sitting in the corner. I shined the light over by it. When I did, I saw what appeared to me to be a boy about my age, sitting under the desk. He was hugging his knees, rocking back and forth. He was looking down, but in a moment he looked up, and the flashlight shined into his eyes. I don't know why, but that was the moment I began to get terrified. I turned and ran out of the attic, jumping down the stairs 2 at a time, and then closing the door behind me. I ran to my parents and Grandma and told them about what I'd just experienced. My dad took the flashlight and went up to search the attic himself. He came back and said he'd searched the entire place, and there didn't appear to be anyone up there. He even checked around the rest of the house and said there was no one there at all. It was then that my grandma said something I'll always remember. She never went into the attic for any reason and didn't even know where the key for it was. The door shouldn't have been unlocked, and she had absolutely no idea how it could have gotten unlocked at all. When my wife Melissa and I bought the house, the realtor described it as a quirky but full of character building. It was an old 2-story place, built sometime in the 1920s. The floors creaked in certain spots, the stairs were narrow, and half the doors only closed if you leaned your shoulder into them. But the price was good and the neighborhood was quiet. For the first few months, everything seemed normal. Then the knocking started. The first time I heard it, I was half asleep. 3 dull taps from somewhere in the hallway. I assumed it was the pipes at first. Old houses tend to make noise at night when the heat kicks on, so I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next night it happened again though. 3 knocks, then silence, then 3 more. Melissa heard it too that time. She lifted her head off the pillow and listened in. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I said it was probably the pipes, but she shook her head at me. Pipes don't knock in patterns. I tried to laugh it off, but after she said that, I just couldn't stop noticing it. Every night at around the same time, 3 knocks, then a pause, then 3 knocks again. It always sounded like it was coming from the same place, too. The hallway wall just outside our bedroom. Now that wall had always seemed a little strange to me. It stuck out farther than it should have, creating a weird bump in the hallway that made the floor plan feel slightly off. I'd noticed it when we moved in, but never really thought much about it. I figured it was covering up some ductwork or something. After a couple weeks of the knocking, curiosity finally got the better of me. One Saturday morning, I grabbed a tape measure and started checking the layout of the home. That's when I noticed something really weird. The hallway measured almost 3 feet wider than the guest bedroom on the other side of the wall accounted for. At first, I thought I'd measured it wrong, so I did it again. I got the same result. There was some empty space inside that wall, and quite a bit of it too, it appeared. Melissa frowned when I told her. "What if it's like an old chimney or something?" she said. I was already suspicious. I knocked along the wall with my knuckles. Most of it sounded solid, until I hit one section that gave a hollow thud. Melissa looked at me immediately. "That must be where the knocking comes from." I grabbed my stud finder from the garage. The readings jumped around strangely in that spot, like the framing behind the drywall didn't follow a normal pattern. I cut a small square out of it, and behind it was just pure darkness. There was no insulation or pipes, just this empty space. Melissa crouched next to me and shined her phone flashlight through the hole. "What's that?" I widened the opening until we could both see inside. There was a narrow room hidden between the walls, maybe 8 feet long, and just wide enough for someone to crawl through. Apparently someone had. There were blankets piled in one corner, and empty water bottles and food wrappers strewn about. I felt my stomach tighten immediately. Someone had been living in there. Melissa pointed her flashlight deeper into the space. "Look!" Written across all the wooden studs were dates. Dozens of them. Some of them were very old. Unfortunately, some of them were more recent. The most recent one had been written just 2 weeks earlier. That didn't make sense. We'd owned the house for 3 months. Carefully, I widened the hole enough for me to crawl inside. The air inside this hidden room smelled stale, like dust and old cardboard. I moved slowly, trying not to step on anything. The blankets were filthy, like they'd been used for a long time, and next to them was a small flashlight and this cracked plastic radio. I followed the line of dates along the studs. They were all written the same way. That was when I noticed something that really made my stomach drop. Along the far wall, there were tiny holes drilled through the wood, dozens of them. They weren't random either. They were lined up perfectly. I leaned closer to one and peeked through. On the other side was the hallway, the exact wall the knocking had been coming from. They were viewing holes, and someone had been watching us. Melissa asked what was going on, and I crawled back out. I told her someone had been living inside our walls. Melissa stared at the dates again. "You said the last one was 2 weeks ago." I nodded, and neither of us spoke for a moment. She asked when the knocking had started. I thought about it, and the first time I remembered hearing it had been about 3 weeks after we moved in. A strange feeling crept over me. We called the police immediately, and we hired a contractor to fix things to make sure no one could ever get into that space again. this is something that happened back when I was looking to buy a phone on Facebook Marketplace. For some background, I was a 21-year-old woman at the time and needed a new cell phone. My iPhone was old, outdated, and also out of storage. It only had 64 gigabytes on it, so I knew that I could get one cheap on Facebook Marketplace, as I didn't have the money to buy a brand new cell phone. I looked around and found one pretty quickly that seemed like a good deal. It was not too good to be true, still a good price. I contacted the seller through Facebook and was told that it was still available. I was glad to hear that and said that I wanted to buy it ASAP. The guy told me I could come right on over and pick it up. This was the first red flag. I knew that it could be dangerous to go to a stranger's home to buy something, so I actually offered to meet at a public place instead. The guy refused. He did have an excuse though, saying his car was broken down and he couldn't get out right now. I didn't want to pry into his personal business and figured that maybe it's not really that big of a deal. I said okay. We arranged for a time, which was the following evening. He gave me his address, which I drove to. It was an apartment complex, about 15 minutes away. It was really old and crappy. One of the worst apartment buildings I've ever seen, and it was in a bad part of town too. So that was the second red flag. Still, I went on anyway. I let him know that I was there, and he buzzed me in. His apartment was on the 4th floor, and I took the stairs up because the elevator was broken. The whole building looked really bad. I got up to his door and knocked on it. He quickly opened it. He had sort of long, greasy-looking hair. He had big glasses and wore a large t-shirt and shorts. The guy gave me a bad vibe right off the bat. He told me to come in and seemed really awkward and also creepy. Some guys are just shy and that's perfectly fine, but this guy was that sort of weird creeper awkward. He made small talk with me. I wasn't feeling too bad yet, but his apartment was super messy. There was clutter everywhere, and it smelled really bad. He asked me if I lived nearby, how old I was, and a few other basic questions. I answered him with brief answers, but I didn't see the phone anywhere. I asked him if he really had it, and he said yes. He then told me to follow him, which I really did not like. I was hoping he would have just had it there on him. I followed him through the living room, down a small hallway, and into a bedroom. As we were walking, he said out of nowhere, "You know, we should hang out sometime." I just kind of laughed and said, "Oh, maybe." We got to his bedroom, and he said he kept all his phones in the closet. What a weird thing to say. He opened this door to this pretty large closet, and inside there was a pile of around 100 cell phones on the ground. He had all sorts. iPhones, Androids, old and new. They were just there on the floor in a pile, not organized at all. I asked him why he had so many phones. He said he liked to collect them and sell them to make a few bucks. He then told me that his methods of getting them might make some people frown upon him. I didn't know exactly what he meant by this, but the way he said it, it was like he was insinuating he stole them or something. I just said, okay. He dug around and found the phone, showed it to me, and asked if this was the one I wanted. I didn't even know at that point anymore. I just said yes. In reality, though, I no longer really wanted to buy it. I held the phone, pretending to look at it. He told me it worked fine. He had wiped it clean and jailbroken it, and out of nowhere, he asked if I wanted to spend the night at his place. It was so random. I said no thanks. I really just wanted to get out of there. I thought on my feet and said I'd forgotten the cash in my car, and I would go and get it real quick. I acted like I was really disappointed and upset, and I think my acting must have been good, because it seemed like he believed me. Really, I had the cash in my pocket. I walked out and said I would be right back. I left as soon as I could. I sprinted out of the building, ran to my car, and drove home. I blocked him and got off Facebook. Looking back, it was really creepy and strange. I don't know what exactly was going on there, but I'm glad I left that weird guy's house when I did. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. The first thing I'm going to do right now is thank all of the Patreon backers who have backed the credits tier. Those would be Grace Demarest, Katie O'Brien, Caitlin, Amy Jensen, Deborah Alexander, Stephen Dahlberg, Gaddy Family, and Jessica GB. Thank you all so much for deciding to contribute so much to the Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be able to keep on going. So I really can't thank you enough. If you guys have any stories you would like to personally share or send in for me to read, please be sure to check the description and find my email, bluespookyreadings@gmail.com. The primary way to send it to me would be to send it to me on there, but I also have links to my other social media, my Twitter and my Facebook. Although, if you send me a message on there, I'm a little less active than I am on my email, so I might not get to it as soon as you'd like. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I think that's about it for today, so I'll see you guys soon, and I hope you guys have a great day.